In the heart of a vast African landscape, where the golden sun kisses the earth with unwavering warmth, lay a small, tightly knit village. Surrounded by sprawling fields of tall grasses and ancient baobab trees, this village was a place where every sound, scent, and sight told stories passed down through generations. The air was thick with the aroma of burning wood and fresh earth, mixed with the laughter of children playing beneath the endless blue sky. Here, tradition wasn't just a way of life, it was the very fabric that held the community together. From the rhythmic pounding of drums during the full moon to the whispered tales of ancestors around evening fires, the village thrived on its rich cultural heritage. Every villager had a role, every elder carried wisdom, and every child was taught the importance of belonging to the land and to each other. Among the village's many residents was a young girl named Amara, whose presence radiated an unusual brightness. Though only 12 years old, Amara's spirit seemed far older, tempered by both the hardships she had faced and an innate kindness that no challenge could dull. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and innocence, often betraying a mind that wondered about the world beyond the village borders. Amara was known for her smile, a rare gift in a place where life was often harsh, and survival required grit and obedience. Despite the worn clothes she wore and the frequent scolding from her guardian, her smile was a beacon of hope, a silent protest against the tough realities she faced daily. Amara's world was one deeply entrenched in customs and unwritten rules, especially when it came to strangers. The village had long-standing cultural norms about outsiders. To smile at or interact with a stranger was not just frowned upon, it was seen as dangerous. The elders taught that strangers could bring misfortune, illness, or even curses. Family ties were sacred, the roots that anchored each person to their community and identity. Knowing one's lineage was not just a matter of pride but a matter of survival, for family protected, nurtured, and ensured the continuation of traditions. The village was wary, almost fiercely protective, of anyone unfamiliar, and any breach of this wariness was met with suspicion and, sometimes, harsh judgment. The air in the village was often thick with a subtle tension born from this collective suspicion. Conversations hushed when strangers passed through the dusty paths, and eyes followed them with a mixture of fear and curiosity. This suspicion was not born of mere prejudice but from generations of stories about deceit and danger lurking beyond familiar faces. The village, while warm and welcoming to its own, was cautious, wary of the unknown. This collective vigilance often led to a heavy atmosphere, where a smile, especially from a child like Amara, could be seen as a reckless act of defiance. Amara's story was whispered among the villagers, carrying a hint of mystery that clung to her like a shadow. No one knew the full truth about her past, and yet her very presence suggested a story left untold. Some said she was the daughter of a woman who had once loved a man from a distant land, a man who vanished without a trace. Others believed she carried a secret lineage that linked her to a family long thought lost. This mystery surrounded her like an invisible veil, coloring the villagers' perceptions of her, and adding an unspoken tension to her interactions. The uncertainty about her origins made her both an object of pity and suspicion, a fragile thread woven into the complex tapestry of the village. As the sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting long shadows over the huts and the fields, the village seemed to hold its breath. The peaceful rhythm of life was about to be disrupted, and Amara's innocent smile, which had so often lit her face like a beacon, was about to set in motion events that would challenge the very foundation of tradition and belief. Unbeknownst to her, that smile was not just a sign of hope but a spark that would ignite hidden truths and long-buried secrets, bringing to light a story of family, identity, and courage. The village, with all its customs and fears, was on the brink of change, and Amara stood unknowingly at the center of it all. The evening wind whispered through the tall grass as the stars began to shimmer overhead. Somewhere beyond the village, a figure watched silently from the shadows, carrying a burden of regret and longing. The stage was set, the players in motion, and the quiet village was about to witness a tale that would be told for generations, a tale born from a simple smile, a stranger's arrival, and the revelation of a hidden bond that would forever alter the lives of those involved. In this small corner of the world, where tradition met change, the story of Amara was about to unfold. Amara's life was woven from threads of hardship and hope, stitched together in the quiet corners of her small village. From the earliest days of her childhood, she had been raised by her mother, Naya, a stern woman with eyes like sharpened stones, hardened by years of struggle and loss. Naya was a woman bound tightly to the customs of the village, her sense of duty woven deeply into her soul. She believed that discipline was the only way to protect Amara from the dangers lurking beyond the familiar faces of their community. Though Naya's love was real, it was expressed through strict rules and frequent reprimands, leaving little room for softness or tenderness. To her, the world was unforgiving, and the only way to survive was through strength and obedience. Amara's upbringing was humble. Their small hut, made from mud bricks and a thatched roof, was modest and often chilly at night. She shared her space with her mother and a few belongings, a threadbare blanket, a wooden doll crafted by a neighbor, and a small clay pot that held water. Despite the scarcity, the walls echoed with stories whispered by Naya during long evenings, tales of ancestors, of bravery, and of the unbreakable bonds of family. These stories nurtured something within Amara, a desire to understand more, to dream beyond the confines of their village. Within the community, Amara was neither privileged nor outcast. She was an ordinary girl in the eyes of many, yet there was an undercurrent of curiosity about her, fueled by whispers about her parentage. Some villagers saw her as a symbol of resilience, while others regarded her with suspicion. This duality shaped how she moved through the village, often with quiet grace, sometimes with a cautious glance over her shoulder. She was familiar with the delicate balance between fitting in and standing apart, between following the rules and listening to the call of her own heart. Amara's personality was a tapestry of kindness and curiosity, woven with strands of hope that refused to be snuffed out. She was naturally gentle, often found helping younger children or tending to the village's small garden patches. Her heart held a compassion that extended even to the animals she cared for, chickens, goats, and the occasional stray dog. More than anything, Amara was curious about the world. She would watch the horizon for hours, imagining what lay beyond the tall grasses and dusty roads. Her mind danced with questions: what was beyond the hills? Who were the people in distant lands? And most quietly, why did her mother never speak of her father? Her relationship with Naya was complex. Naya's love was undeniable but wrapped in layers of fear and expectation. The mother believed that protecting Amara meant controlling her every step, limiting her interactions, keeping her within the village boundaries, and suppressing any signs of rebellion. Amara often faced harsh discipline for small acts of defiance, a smile at a passing stranger, lingering too long in the fields, or asking too many questions. These punishments were sometimes physical, leaving marks on her skin and scars in her heart. Yet, despite this, Amara never lost her spark. The pain of discipline was softened by a deep understanding that her mother's strictness came from a place of fear, fear of losing her daughter to the unknown, fear of the past catching up with them. Every day brought new struggles for Amara. She woke early to help with household chores, fetching water from the well, grinding maize for porridge, and tending to the small fire that cooked their meals. The sun's heat was relentless, and the work exhausting, but Amara carried it all with quiet determination. At school, if she was lucky enough to attend on days when her chores were lighter, she listened intently to lessons about numbers, letters, and stories from faraway places. Education was a luxury, but for Amara, it was a window to a different future. Despite the weight of her responsibilities, she dreamed of one day stepping beyond the boundaries of her village, learning more about the world and her place in it. The village's challenges were many. Food was scarce during dry seasons, and illness could sweep through without warning. The community relied heavily on each other's strength, but isolation often bred fear. In this environment, Amara's smile became a quiet rebellion, a symbol of resilience and innocence amid hardship. It was a smile that spoke of hope, a silent promise that no matter how difficult life became, there was still light to be found. When she smiled, it was as if the weight of the world momentarily lifted from her small shoulders, and for a fleeting moment, she was free. This smile, bright and genuine, was not lost on those who knew her. To the village children, Amara's smile was a beacon that drew them near, inviting laughter and games despite the harsh realities around them. To the elders, it was a puzzling enigma, a sign of something unexplainable that did not quite fit their understanding of tradition. And to Naya, it was both a source of pride and worry. She feared that her daughter's kindness and curiosity might one day lead her into danger, yet she could not bring herself to extinguish the light in Amara's eyes. Amara's smile was her shield and her strength. It was a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, the human spirit could endure, could dream, and could reach out for connection. It was this smile that would one day spark a chain of events neither she nor the village could have anticipated, a smile that, though punished, would reveal truths long buried and change lives forever. Through the hardships and the love, the discipline and the dreams, Amara stood as a testament to resilience. In a world where every day was a battle for survival, her spirit remained unbroken. And in her heart, nestled between fear and hope, was the quiet belief that her story was far from over, that beyond the struggles of today lay a future shaped by love, truth, and the courage to face what was to come. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty village path where Amara often walked. The heat was heavy, wrapping the world in a slow, shimmering haze that made every movement feel weighed down. On this particular day, as Amara moved quietly between the huts, her thoughts were elsewhere, drifting toward the distant hills she had only seen in her dreams. Her eyes caught a figure approaching from the edge of the village, a silhouette that stirred something deep inside her, though she could not yet understand what. The stranger's presence was immediately felt by everyone in the village. He moved with a slow, deliberate gait, a shadow among shadows, his clothing worn but clean, a cloth wrapped loosely around his head. There was something both unfamiliar and compelling about him. His eyes held a softness that clashed with the rough edges of his appearance. His face was weathered, marked by time and hardship, yet his gaze seemed gentle, almost searching, as if he was looking for something lost. To the villagers, however, he was a cause for caution, an enigma who did not belong. Amara noticed him too, and as their eyes met briefly, a sudden impulse blossomed in her heart. She smiled, an innocent, warm smile that was both a greeting and a silent gesture of trust. In that moment, it was as if the world narrowed to just the two of them, the noise of the village fading away. Her smile was a spark of kindness, a light in the midst of suspicion. To her, the stranger was not a threat but a person who deserved a moment of warmth, a connection beyond the rules that govern their lives. But the village did not see it that way. Whispers rose instantly, sharp and urgent. Mothers pulled their children closer, elders exchanged knowing glances, and the village elders' stern faces darkened. The smile Amara offered so freely was, in their eyes, a breach of sacred law, a dangerous sign of trust placed in the unknown. They feared that the stranger might bring misfortune, that Amara's innocent act could invite harm upon the community. To smile at a stranger was to invite chaos, and the villagers' unease rippled through the dusty air like a warning. It wasn't long before the village elders summoned Amara. The moment she was called before the council of elders, her heart pounded in her chest, confusion swirling within her like a storm. She had not intended to break any rules. To her, a smile was a simple gesture, a way of sharing light, not an act of rebellion. Yet the elders' eyes were hard, their voices cold and unforgiving. "You have broken the traditions of this village," one elder intoned gravely. "You have shown disrespect to the customs that protect us all. Smiling at a stranger invites danger. You must learn the consequences of such folly." The punishment was swift and harsh. Naya, her mother, stood by with a stern face, her eyes filled with disappointment and fear. The villagers watched silently, some with sympathy, others with approval, as Amara was reprimanded. The punishment was not just physical, a few harsh strikes that left red marks on her small arms, but also a public shaming that cut deeper than any wound. She was told to stay inside her hut for days, forbidden from playing or speaking freely, a prisoner to the weight of her supposed misstep. Amara's confusion grew with every moment of her punishment. She could not understand why her simple smile had brought such wrath. Was kindness truly a crime? The pain in her body was matched only by the ache in her heart, a deep, unexplainable sorrow that made her question everything she had believed about her place in the world. Her mother's stern gaze, the villagers' whispers, the cold judgment of the elders, all pressed down on her like a heavy stone. Yet within her, something stubborn refused to fade. The smile that had sparked this turmoil remained a quiet flame inside her soul, flickering with hope and innocence. She did not regret it, even as tears filled her eyes. To Amara, that moment of connection with the stranger was pure, a glimpse of something real and kind in a world often filled with fear and suspicion. As she lay alone in the dim light of her hut, nursing the bruises and the confusion, Amara's thoughts turned again to the stranger. Who was he? Why had her smile reached him? And why did her punishment feel so much like a barrier, an invisible wall separating her from a truth she had yet to discover? These questions echoed in her mind, intertwining with the pain and the hope, creating a silent promise that she would one day seek answers, no matter the cost. The village continued its quiet hum around her, but for Amara, nothing would ever be quite the same. That simple smile had shifted something deep within the fragile balance of her life and the village's traditions. What had seemed like a small act of kindness was, in truth, the first step toward a journey that would unravel secrets, challenge old beliefs, and reveal the hidden ties that bound her to the stranger who walked their dusty path. The stranger moved slowly along the worn dirt path that led through the village, each step heavy with memories and uncertainty. His eyes, dark and deep, scanned the familiar faces, the simple huts, and the familiar landscape that once had been his home. But now everything felt different, distant, as if time had created a chasm too wide to cross easily. He was a man burdened by the weight of years spent away, by choices made and paths taken, yet drawn back by a force stronger than regret, the pull of a daughter he had never truly known. His name was Kofi, though he no longer introduced himself to anyone. He had learned that names held power in this village, power to connect, but also to bind. For now, he remained a silent observer, a stranger in the place he once called home. Kofi's heart was a tempest of emotions, fear, hope, shame, and an overwhelming desire to see his child. The years away had been harsh. Circumstances beyond his control had pulled him away, forcing him into exile from the only life he had ever imagined. But the thought of Amara, his daughter, kept him tethered to the world, a reason to return. As he walked, he noticed the way the villagers moved cautiously around him, their eyes flickering with suspicion. He knew the stories they told, whispers of a man who had abandoned his family, of a stranger bringing danger. But Kofi did not come seeking forgiveness. He came seeking connection, hoping that somewhere beneath the layers of fear and tradition, a spark of recognition might flicker in his daughter's eyes. He kept his distance, careful not to reveal too much, watching Amara from afar. There was a grace about her, a quiet strength that reminded him painfully of himself. When their eyes met for a brief moment, he felt a surge of hope, a fragile bridge forming between their worlds. Yet he remained silent, unwilling to shatter the fragile peace by revealing his identity too soon. Instead, he allowed himself to watch, to learn, to be near without disturbing the fragile order of village life. Kofi's heart clenched as he saw the reaction to Amara's smile, the harsh judgment, the whispered warnings, the eventual punishment. He stood hidden behind a tree, invisible but deeply wounded. The sharp strikes she received, the way she was led away in shame, it tore at something deep inside him. He wanted to reach out, to hold her close, to tell her everything. But he knew that would only bring danger to her, that their reunion had to be handled with care, patience, and understanding. There was an aching silence in Kofi's chest, a silent heartbreak that words could not express. Watching his daughter suffer for an act so innocent was agony beyond description. Yet even in his pain, he saw the resilience in her eyes, the same stubborn light that had drawn him back. He vowed silently to protect her, to reclaim his place in her life no matter the obstacles. Every day, Kofi wrestled with the choice between revealing himself and remaining a shadow. The fear of rejection battled with the desperate hope that Amara might one day recognize him, that the bond of blood could overcome the walls built by fear and tradition. His return was not just a journey across land but across time and memory, an attempt to mend what had been broken. Though the village saw him as a stranger, to Kofi, this place was the center of his world, the roots from which he had been torn but never forgotten. His presence was a silent plea for acceptance, for understanding, for the chance to rewrite a story that had been left unfinished. And in the quiet moments, when the village slept and the stars watched over him, he dreamed of a day when Amara's smile would no longer be met with punishment, but with open arms. For now, Kofi remained an observer, hopeful, anxious, and broken, yet unyielding in his love. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to face whatever came, driven by a father's unbreakable bond and the silent promise that he would not walk away again. In this village, traditions were not just customs, they were the living heartbeat of the community, passed down from ancestors whose wisdom was woven into every aspect of daily life. Among the most deeply ingrained beliefs was the suspicion of strangers. The villagers held a conviction rooted in countless stories and warnings: strangers could bring misfortune, curses, or even death. To them, an unfamiliar face was not merely someone unknown, but a potential threat to the safety, harmony, and spiritual balance of their community. The arrival of outsiders was greeted with guarded eyes and whispered fears, for the village believed that evil often arrived disguised behind friendly smiles. Central to these beliefs was the sanctity of family honor. Family ties were the foundation of identity and security, anchoring each individual to a lineage that carried the protection of ancestors. To breach this sacred bond by fraternizing with strangers was seen as an act of betrayal, not just of one's family, but of the entire community. It was feared that such breaches could unravel the social fabric, invite chaos, and open the door to dangers no one could foresee. Maintaining honor meant preserving boundaries, ensuring that every member respected the rules that kept the village safe and whole. Amara's smile at the stranger was therefore not a simple gesture, it was a profound transgression in the eyes of the village. To smile at a stranger was to open oneself to the unknown and, in their belief, to invite harm. The elders taught that such an act could weaken the protective barriers woven by tradition, making the entire community vulnerable. This was why her punishment was severe, not merely because she disobeyed a rule, but because she threatened the spiritual and social balance that had sustained the village for generations. These beliefs dictated much of the village's behavior. Suspicion bred caution, and caution bred strict justice. When a rule was broken, it was not left to personal feelings or forgiveness but addressed through communal authority. The elders served as the keepers of these traditions, their judgments swift and binding. Justice was less about individual rights and more about protecting the collective good. This sometimes meant that mercy was scarce, and the weight of tradition was heavy on the shoulders of those who dared to step outside its bounds. Among the elders was Baba Mosi, a man whose voice carried the weight of years and whose eyes reflected the deep pride and concern he held for his people. Baba Mosi was a staunch defender of tradition, believing that the village's survival depended on unwavering adherence to its customs. To him, change was a slow and cautious process, one that could not come at the expense of the community's safety. He often spoke of the ancestors, whose spirits watched over the village and whose laws must be respected above all. Yet even Baba Mosi grappled with the tension between tradition and the subtle currents of change that rippled beneath the surface. He sensed the stirrings of a new generation, one that questioned, that wondered about the world beyond the village's borders, and that dared to hope for something different. While his heart remained bound to the old ways, he recognized that rigid adherence without understanding could breed fear and isolation. This tension was starkly evident when contrasted with the stranger's presence. To the villagers, he was a symbol of the unknown, a potential harbinger of danger. But to those who looked closer, the stranger, Kofi, was a man marked by humanity, burdened by love and longing. His gentle eyes and cautious movements told a story of a father searching for connection, not conquest. The village's harsh judgments collided painfully with the stranger's quiet hope, revealing a gap between fear-driven tradition and the simple, powerful bonds of family. The villagers' fears and Baba Mosi's stern resolve stood as a formidable wall against Kofi's return. Yet beneath this wall, there stirred the undeniable truth that family ties could transcend suspicion and superstition. The story of Amara's smile, the stranger's presence, and the elders' judgments became a living question: could the strength of love and humanity soften the rigidity of ancient beliefs? Could the village find a way to balance respect for tradition with the need to embrace change? In the heart of this village, where every action was weighed against the collective good, the clash between fear and hope, between old and new, shaped not only the fate of one girl and one stranger but the very soul of the community itself. It was a delicate dance of trust and caution, a story written in the language of belief and the silent yearning for understanding beyond fear. Amara's world, once clearly defined by rules and boundaries, began to blur in the quiet moments after her punishment. The strict lines drawn by tradition felt less like protection and more like chains, binding her to a life she yearned to understand beyond. Inside her, a storm of questions brewed, questions she dared not voice aloud but which filled her every waking thought. Why was it wrong to smile at a stranger? Why was kindness punished when the heart was pure? The village's rigid rules, once accepted without question, now felt confusing and heavy. Her mind often wandered back to the stranger, the man whose presence had stirred something deep inside her. Who was he, really? What had drawn him to the village after so many years? There was a mysterious gentleness in his eyes that contrasted sharply with the suspicion and fear she had been taught to feel. Amara's heart ached with a longing she couldn't fully explain, a desire to know more about the man who had somehow touched her life in a single glance. It was as if beneath the weight of tradition lay a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. Though her days remained filled with chores and the watchful eyes of her mother and the village elders, small moments of kindness began to slip through the cracks of her controlled existence. A neighbor's gentle smile as they passed by, a child sharing a handful of wild berries, the soft murmur of a friend's comforting voice, these simple acts kindled a fragile hope within her. They whispered of a world where compassion was not forbidden, where connection could exist without fear. Each of these moments became a lifeline, strengthening her resolve to look beyond what she had always known. Amara's secret yearning grew quietly but fiercely. She dreamed of a family that was more than rules and punishments, a family bound by love and understanding rather than fear. The absence of her father in her life was a hollow space she longed to fill, and the stranger's presence, even if shrouded in mystery, became a beacon of possibility. She imagined what it might be like to belong fully, to be seen and loved for who she truly was, not just as a girl who had broken a rule. Her dreams were innocent but powerful. At night, under the canopy of stars, Amara imagined walking hand in hand with her father, feeling the warmth of his protection and the strength of his embrace. She pictured a life where she could ask questions without fear, where smiles were met with kindness instead of punishment. These dreams gave her a quiet courage, a small but growing flame that whispered she was meant for something more than the fear and suspicion that surrounded her. In this internal conflict, Amara became a mirror of the village itself, caught between the old ways and the possibilities of change. Her doubts and desires were the first cracks in a foundation built on fear, signaling that beneath the surface, new stories were ready to unfold. Through her innocent eyes, the world was both a place of harsh rules and hidden hope, a place where the longing for truth and connection could one day rewrite what it meant to belong. Her journey was just beginning, and though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, Amara's growing doubts and secret dreams carried the promise of a future shaped not by fear, but by love and understanding. The air was thick with tension as the sun began to dip behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the village. Word had spread quickly after the incident with Amara's smile, and whispers about the stranger's identity swirled through the dusty streets like a restless wind. Many eyes watched from the safety of their huts, wary and uncertain. Few dared approach the man who had dared to return after so many years, a man who now stood at the heart of a story much bigger than anyone had anticipated. The moment came unexpectedly. Amara had been sent to fetch water from the well near the edge of the village, a task she often found solace in despite the harshness of her life. As she knelt to fill her clay pot, she felt a presence behind her, a familiar warmth she could not explain. Slowly, she turned, and there he stood, the stranger, his face lined with the passage of time but unmistakably the man she had glimpsed days before. His eyes searched hers, filled with hope and fear, bearing the weight of years spent apart. "Kofi," she whispered, the name slipping from her lips as if it had been waiting there all along. The stranger's voice trembled as he spoke. "Amara, my daughter. I am your father." The world seemed to hold its breath. In that moment, the harsh lines of tradition clashed violently with the raw power of reunion. The villagers gathered, some with disbelief, others with anger. To them, the man was an intruder, a threat to the fragile order they had fought to maintain. But to Amara, he was the missing piece of her soul, the answer to the silent questions that had haunted her since childhood. Kofi's story poured out between heavy breaths, a confession of pain and regret. Years ago, circumstances beyond his control had forced him to leave, the village torn by conflict, his family endangered, and his own survival uncertain. He had been driven away by fear and necessity, not by choice. The years in exile had hardened him, but the thought of his daughter never left his heart. Every moment away was a wound, every memory of her a sharp ache. "I left to protect you all," he said, voice cracking with emotion. "But I never stopped searching for a way back, for a way to be part of your life again." Amara listened, tears streaming down her cheeks as the pieces of her fractured past began to fit together. The pain of his absence mingled with the joy of his presence, creating a tumultuous storm inside her. The villagers murmured among themselves, some unwilling to believe, others moved by the raw honesty in Kofi's words. Yet, tradition still cast a long shadow. Baba Mosi, the village elder, stepped forward, his face grave and conflicted. "You return after all this time, disrupting the peace and the rules that keep us safe," he said firmly. "How can we trust you now? How do we know your presence will not bring harm?" Kofi met Baba Mosi's gaze steadily, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. "I am no enemy," he replied. "I come as a father, seeking to heal wounds, not deepen them. I ask only for a chance to prove my love, to protect my daughter, and to belong once more." The village was caught in a moment of suspended time, the weight of tradition pressing heavily against the possibility of change. For many, the old ways were the only shield they had against a world filled with uncertainty. Yet, beneath the fear, there was a stirring hope, an unspoken yearning to embrace a future where love could break through suspicion. Amara stepped forward, her voice clear despite the trembling in her heart. "Father, I have waited for you without knowing it. I want to believe that family can be more than rules and fear. Let us try." Her words rippled through the crowd, softening hardened faces and opening eyes to a new possibility. The tension did not disappear overnight, but a fragile bridge had been built, a bridge between the past and the future, between the unyielding strength of tradition and the gentle power of love. In the days that followed, the village watched as Kofi and Amara slowly forged a bond, their connection a living testament to the resilience of family ties. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with challenges and resistance, but it was also filled with hope. The stranger was no longer just a stranger, he was a father reclaimed, a symbol of new beginnings in a village learning to balance the sacred weight of tradition with the undeniable force of change. The revelation of Kofi's identity sent ripples through the village that were felt in every corner. The air was thick with a mix of emotions, as people grappled with the truth that challenged everything they had long held as certain. Some villagers responded with fear, their eyes clouded by memories of past dangers and the deeply ingrained suspicion of outsiders. The presence of the man who had once abandoned his family reopened old wounds and stirred anxieties about what his return might bring. They worried that his arrival could upset the fragile peace and invite misfortune, just as the village's traditions had warned. Others reacted with anger, unable to accept that the rules had been broken so publicly. They saw Kofi as reckless, disrespectful to the customs that had protected their community for generations. His sudden reappearance was viewed by some as a threat, not just to the social order, but to the very honor of Amara's family. Harsh whispers spread, questioning his motives and loyalty. Yet amid the fear and anger, there were also voices of curiosity and hope. Some villagers, especially the younger ones, watched with quiet fascination and tentative optimism. They sensed that this story was more than a simple breach of tradition, it was a chance for growth, for healing old divides, and for embracing a future shaped by understanding rather than fear. Amara's mother, Mariama, experienced the revelation with a turbulent heart. At first, jealousy flared within her, a fierce, painful response to the stranger who had suddenly appeared to claim the daughter she had raised alone. Mariama struggled with feelings of betrayal and loss, questioning her own place in Amara's life. Yet beneath the jealousy was a deeper, more complicated tide of guilt and vulnerability. She knew she had been harsh, enforcing the village's rules to protect Amara in the only way she understood. The truth of Kofi's return forced Mariama to confront her fears, not just of the stranger, but of losing her daughter's love and the family she had fought so hard to keep intact. Over time, Mariama's stance softened, as she glimpsed the genuine love and remorse in Kofi's eyes and saw the light returning to Amara's smile. For Amara, the aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. She wrestled with the contradictions of her past, the strict discipline and suspicion that had shaped her childhood, and the newfound hope that her father's presence ignited. Reconciling these two worlds was not easy. She felt torn between loyalty to the mother who had cared for her and a longing to embrace the father she had only just met. There were moments of confusion, fear, and even anger, but beneath it all was a fierce determination to understand her own story and claim her identity. Amara's journey became one of self-discovery, as she learned to navigate the complexities of family and tradition, carving a space for herself that honored both her past and her dreams. Kofi, for his part, committed himself to rebuilding trust within the community. He understood that his return was not just a personal reunion but a challenge to the village's way of life. Patient and humble, he sought to prove through his actions that he was no threat. He helped with daily tasks, shared stories that connected him to the village's history, and listened to the concerns of the elders and neighbors. Slowly, the walls of suspicion began to crumble as Kofi showed his dedication to the community's well-being and his unwavering love for Amara. His presence became a catalyst for dialogue, between generations, between tradition and change. The village itself began to feel the first gentle stirrings of transformation. The harsh judgments that had once ruled interactions softened into conversations filled with empathy and understanding. While not everyone was ready to embrace change fully, the story of Kofi and Amara planted seeds of hope that tradition could coexist with new beginnings. Healing was not immediate, nor was it without struggle, but the community began to open its heart to the possibility that love and forgiveness could bridge divides once thought unbreakable. In this fragile new chapter, the village learned that the past, with all its pain and rules, did not have to dictate the future. Through the courage of one girl's smile and a father's return, a path toward reconciliation and growth was forged, one that honored heritage while embracing the transformative power of acceptance. The story of Amara and her father, Kofi, unfolds as a rich tapestry woven with threads of family, identity, forgiveness, and tradition, each theme offering profound lessons that resonate far beyond the boundaries of their village. At its core, this tale reminds us that family is not simply defined by proximity or blood alone, but by the enduring bonds of love, understanding, and acceptance. It is within these bonds that identity takes root, shaping who we are and how we see ourselves in the world. Amara's journey toward embracing her true father illuminates the complexity of identity, how it is both inherited and discovered, influenced by culture but also by personal experience. Forgiveness emerges as a pivotal force within the narrative. The villagers' initial harsh judgment of Amara and Kofi reflects a common human tendency, to fear the unfamiliar and to condemn what challenges our deeply held beliefs. Yet, it is compassion, an openness to seeing beyond mistakes and fears, that ultimately opens the door to healing. The story warns against the dangers of snap judgments, reminding us that such reactions can isolate, hurt, and perpetuate misunderstanding. Through patience and empathy, the community begins to move beyond suspicion, demonstrating that forgiveness is not just a gift to others but a liberation for oneself. Tradition holds a dual place in the story. On one hand, it anchors the village in a shared history and provides a framework for social order and identity. On the other hand, rigid adherence to tradition without room for reflection or adaptation can become a barrier to growth and connection. The tension between honoring the past and embracing change is palpable throughout the narrative, underscoring the delicate balance communities everywhere must navigate. The elder Baba Mosi's struggle exemplifies this challenge. He embodies respect for tradition but also senses the necessity of opening hearts and minds to new possibilities. Amara's transformation is perhaps the most inspiring aspect of the tale. From a girl constrained by fear and punishment, she grows into a young woman who embodies hope, courage, and the desire for truth. Her smile, once seen as a dangerous defiance, becomes a symbol of resilience and the human spirit's capacity to seek connection despite adversity. Her journey encourages readers to reflect on their own lives. How often do we allow fear or prejudice to cloud our judgment? How can we cultivate empathy in moments of conflict? The story invites readers to look beyond appearances and societal labels. Amara's smile, misunderstood and punished, reminds us that actions born from innocence and kindness can be misread when viewed through the lens of suspicion. Kofi's return challenges the notion of stranger and outsider, urging us to recognize the humanity in those we might initially fear or reject. This narrative calls for a deeper understanding that transcends superficial divisions, encouraging an embrace of complexity and nuance in our interactions with others. Ultimately, the tale is a call to action, to question rigid traditions that harm rather than heal, to practice compassion in the face of fear, and to hold space for stories of reconciliation and growth. It asks us to consider how we define family and belonging, urging a vision of community that honors both heritage and the evolving nature of human relationships. Amara's story, rooted in the rich soil of African folktales, offers universal wisdom, a reminder that when we choose love over judgment, understanding over fear, we open the door to a more just and compassionate world. As dawn broke over the village, a gentle golden light spilled across the earth, illuminating the familiar huts and winding paths that had witnessed generations of stories of hardship, resilience, and hope. On this morning, something was different. The air carried a warmth not just from the rising sun but from a quiet transformation that had begun to take root deep within the hearts of the villagers. The old tensions, though not vanished, had softened, giving way to a fragile but promising new beginning. Amara stood near the well, her face radiant with a smile that was no longer shadowed by fear or doubt. This smile was hers alone, free, unburdened, and full of the innocent joy that had once been mistaken for defiance. Around her, children played and elders shared stories, the village alive with a renewed sense of unity. Amara's laughter mingled with theirs, a clear, bright sound that seemed to ripple through the air like a blessing. In that moment, she was not just a girl bound by tradition or punished for a simple smile, she was a symbol of hope, a living testament to the power of love and forgiveness. The return of Kofi, the stranger who was now known as her father, had altered the village in profound ways. His presence had challenged long-held beliefs and stirred uneasy questions about identity, belonging, and change. Yet, through his patience and genuine care, Kofi had begun to build bridges where walls once stood. He was no longer an outsider but a part of the community's unfolding story, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal when met with openness and understanding. The villagers had come to see that love, complex, sometimes painful, but ultimately redemptive, could overcome the fears that had kept them apart. Forgiveness had opened hearts previously closed by suspicion, allowing relationships to grow anew. Amara's family, once fractured by absence and harsh judgment, was now a living example of reconciliation. Her mother, Mariama, and Kofi found ways to share their love for Amara without resentment, modeling a future where old wounds did not define their bonds. This transformation rippled outward, touching the broader community as well. The elders, including Baba Mosi, began to speak more openly about the need to balance tradition with compassion and adaptability. Stories of the past were honored, but so too was the possibility of a future shaped by understanding rather than fear. The village had not abandoned its roots, instead, it had learned to grow new branches that could reach out to those once seen as strangers. As the sun climbed higher, casting light on a village reborn, Amara's smile remained, a quiet, powerful emblem of what had been gained. It was a smile that spoke of resilience, of the courage to dream beyond imposed limits, and of the enduring human spirit's capacity for love. In her smile, the villagers saw a reflection of themselves, and a hopeful glimpse of what lay ahead. To close this story, there is a proverb from the rich tapestry of African folklore that captures its essence: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This saying reminds us that true strength lies not in isolation or rigid adherence to the past, but in unity, compassion, and the willingness to journey forward hand in hand. In the village where Amara once faced punishment for a simple smile, a new chapter had begun, one written with love, forgiveness, and the shared hope of a better tomorrow. The story of the girl, the stranger, and their village stands as a timeless testament to the transformative power of family, acceptance, and the courage to embrace new beginnings.